Hi, my name is Heather. Welcome back to my channel. This is HC BookTube. It is the end of June and it's hot, it's humid, it's time for the frizz. Please forgive me if during the video I kind of dab at myself with a little handy cloth here. I'm going to do something fun today. I would like to do the Enneagram. For those who don't know, the Enneagram is a personality profile. The types are kind of labeled by numbers. You're either type 1 or type 2 or type 3. The numbers really don't mean anything. It's not like 1 is better than 3 or anything like that. Each type has the good points and their not so good points. So what I'm going to do is kind of go over the Enneagram, tell you a little bit about the personality, and do some recommendations for each personality. Before we start, though, I want to kind of show off a little bit. We have a dazzling night in my local library, so I bedazzled my favorite Disney Twisted Tail book. What do y'all think of that? Want to show that off. So anyway, let's begin. Number one type in the Enneagram is the perfectionist. These are people who pretty much, okay, everybody has an inner judge, but nobody has an inner judge as much as one personality does. They are constantly trying to improve themselves. The downside is that they could also be a little bit judgmental towards other people too. Um, but they follow their own rules. They may break society's rules if the society's rules does not conform to their own personal moral moral code. So that's kind of a little synopsis of the one. And so the first book I want to recommend for our one personality is Middlemarch by George Eliot. I think this is kind of an obvious choice. Some of these choices will be obvious, some of them kind of unique. I kind of wanted to get some obscure choices in here, but Middlemarch is definitely obvious for number one. The main character, Dorothea Brooke, she is constantly, from the very beginning, trying to strive to be moral perfection. and I want to kind of laugh at themselves here because it's kind of comical, some of the ideals that she holds. But she is the hero of the story, and it's there's some tragedy here too, and she's a good person. And so I think the ones will really, really appreciate not just her story, but the stories of other people in the town of Middlemarch. The second book I want to recommend for once, I don't have a physical copy of. It is The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addington. Um, I know I've heard some people on BookTube say that they were actually disappointed in this book. The premise is that we have a half goblin, half elf, if I remember correctly. Um, his father is an elf, he's the emperor, his mother was a goblin. And he's just been kind of hidden away for his whole life. He wasn't raised up in court. He was the fourth prince in line, and nobody really cared about him. He was a kind of a shameful thing because he was half goblin. And all of a sudden, his father and his three older brothers all died in an airship crash. So the goblin, his name's Maya, he becomes the emperor. And I hear people kind of get disappointed with this book because there's not really a lot of action. It's mostly a book about court politics. But I think that's what the one would actually appreciate about this book. The one type would appreciate Maya striving to do what's best for his new empire. His willing, I am so sorry. I think the one will appreciate how Maya tries to stick up for what he believes in, what he feels is right. But it's still try to get along with everybody else too. And I think another thing that the one will kind of like about the Goblin Emperor is that Maya has not only get to doesn't have to just get used to this new empire that he's ruling, but he makes it a goal to try to figure out what happened to this airship that caused the big crash that killed most of his family. And he's not doing it just for his sake or for the sake of his family, but he wants to find out what happened for the sake of the crew and their family. So he's a really good, I wouldn't say person, but it's a goblin. Yeah, He's a good, really good person. I think the one would appreciate that. And my last book that I would like to recommend for the one personality is The Divine Comedy. If there is anyone who would appreciate a journey through hell, purgatory, and heaven, paradise, it would be the one personality. And I'm not saying that you have to be religious, Christian or Catholic or anything else to appreciate this journey. I think the study of morals alone and the striving to get to the ultimate goal of paradise, I think that alone will appeal to the one personality. So, the type 2 personality, we call the helper. Sorry, I keep looking off camera. My cat's kind of freaked out by all the books I have stacked up here. But, uh, type 2 personality, we call the helper. These are the people who pretty much takes the world on their shoulders. They are there to organize the parties. They'll give you casseroles if somebody in your family dies. They're there to always help. The downside of the helping personality is they kind of do this in hopes to get love. They're hoping to receive love back for the acts of charity that they do. And if they are not fully appreciated, they could get upset. Um, so that's 2 personality. And again, kind of an obvious choice. This just screams the 2 personality. I'm going to go with Little Women, Louise May Alcott. Now, my copy has Little Women and Good Wives divided. Nowadays, Little Women is just considered those 2 books, period. This is considered like the second half of Little Women. My copy has them divided up, and of course it adds Little Men. I think the whole saga of the March family would appeal to the 2. And it is about moral striving again. They're trying to be good children, good little women. But, there's some drawings in there. But the reason I suggest this for it too is because they help each other. It's not just about them getting to be morally perfect. It's about helping each other to be better people. I think that will appeal to a 2. And to have a type 2 personality kind of laugh at themselves, I recommend Emma. Because sometimes helping out can actually be seen as meddlesome. But it's gentle. Emma is, again, the hero of the story. And you do feel for her. You really do, because she does have the best intentions in heart. I think the 2 would appreciate her struggles. And you do not jump on that table. Do not think about it. She's silly. But I think the 2s would appreciate what Emma tries to do. And my my third book that I recommend for the type 2 personality is Evening Class by Maeve Binchy. This book is set in Dublin, Ireland. She's an Irish writer. And is focused on an evening class of where they're trying to learn Italian. The students trying to learn Italian. They all have different reasons why they want to learn Italian. Or take this class. But what she does in this novel is like basically every person has their own chapter. You see it from their point of view, and you learn their story. And I think that's what a 2 would like about evening class, but not just evening class. I think she would like a lot of. I shouldn't say she. Any 2, he or she, or they, would appreciate getting to know the stories within the family, the community that has been developed here. And eventually, all of her books that are set in Dublin, they kind of feature the same characters, same side characters. You see these characters kind of pop in and out of their books. You don't have to read them in any certain order. You can just pick one up and read it as a standalone. But if you get into her novels, especially her novels set in Dublin, you'll start noticing familiar people. And I think that the 2 personality would kind of like that. It feels like family. So the type 3 personality is called the achiever. These are people who want to achieve. They strive to be good in business. They like to be charming. They like to be the center of attention. They want to be the best, but they want to be the best at what they want, and always strive to achieve. Can't put it any better than that. The downside of the 3 personality sometimes it's hard to get to know a three because they are kind of wearing a mask. They try hard to put up a front of being charming and what everybody wants them to be. It's hard to really get to know what they are really like in person. So, the first book I want to recommend for a three is The Great Gatsby. If anybody would throw a Gatsby party, it would be a type three. And I've said the extravagance, the jazz age. I just think that's the Great Gatsby just screams type three. I'm more of a modern, not exactly a take on Great Gatsby, but now I say modern. It was written in the '90s, but it kind of gives more of a modern perspective. Is A Man in Full by Tom Wolfe. I never hear anybody talk about this book. This is not Thomas Wolfe. It's not the guy who wrote The Homeward Angel. This is Tom Wolfe who wrote The Bonfire of the Vanities. And from what I heard, Bonfire of the Vanities kind of describes the New York City in the '80s, while this pretty much covers Atlanta, Georgia in the '90s. And here's our main character, Charlie Crocker, and he is a big CEO, owns a lot of land, and he's starting to doubt himself. He's growing older, and he's starting to feel like maybe he's not up to doing what he needs to do. And he has to continue to look like he knows what he's doing. And there are other characters we follow that I think really would appeal to the type three, and obviously the urban setting of Atlanta, Georgia in the '90s. I think that would appeal to me. Now, if we want to talk about people who try to achieve, who try to go up in society, we can't do any better than Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray. Yes, I know I have the ugly movie cover. Most of my books, I'm going to say, I get from thrift stores. If I find them in a library sale or thrift store, that's where I buy them. So sometimes I end up with an ugly movie cover. I'm not saying that Reese Witherspoon is ugly, but the cover is ugly. Um, and this is not the first time or the last time you'll see a movie cover. Just sorry, apologize ahead of time. But Becky Sharp, she is the epitome of the three personality. And it's funny is as much as she's always striving to kind of better, not exactly better herself, but move up in society. So it doesn't exactly make her a more moral person, just moving up. But she's so likable in a way too. You can't help but root for her and hope that she gets it. So that's for the type three. Um, Type fours is actually my type. I am a type four personality. These are the individualists, is what they're called. These are people who are creative, kind of quirky. They feel like they don't exactly fit in this world. So even though they are known for being very creative and inspiring, kind of deep people, they kind of have a hard time in life because they feel like everybody else seems to get along in this world better than they do. There's something in the type four that they feel like is missing. They feel like everybody else in the world has something in them that the type four does not have, and that's why they don't fit into this world. So, since I'm a type four myself, I'm going to recommend my favorite book, which is Wuthering Heights. You've heard me mention it several times on my channel if you watch regularly, and again, it's kind of an obvious choice. Even if it wasn't my favorite, it probably would have been picked for because one thing about fours is that they don't have emotions; they are emotions. And talk about the raw emotions. It's right there um, in Wuthering Heights, and I think it's more raw than that. And Gothic, there's something Gothic about the atmosphere too. I think that appeals to the four. I'm actually going to recommend a graphic novel for type 4 personality. Recommend My Favorite Things is Monsters by Neil Ferris. This is about a little girl, I think, in Chicago in the early '60s. Her name's Karen, and she collects. She likes to look at monster magazines that her older brother, gives her. So basically, like they she kind of recreates the magazine covers, and that's usually the start of a chapter, the magazine covers. But I not basically she sees herself as a monster. As you see, this is our main character, Karen, and you can see she kind of draws herself as a werewolf. That's how she sees herself. And uh, I think the four could really relate to that. The kind of just not belonging in society. Feeling that everybody's going to come at you with pitchforks. I'll show you that here. Like that. This is how the fours feel, like everybody's after them. But I also think the fours will just appreciate the artwork. I mean, isn't this beautiful? I mean, get a little bit of color. And mostly, you see the lines here. It looks like she's just really drawing on her school papers. There's like even scribbles down here where she kind of just doodled. So it looks like she's telling her story. Oh, didn't see that. There are some inappropriate pictures. I should look before I show them to you. But as she tells her stories, it looks like she's just kind of drawing. I should tell them. And doodling. Very beautiful. And another thing, another book I want to recommend for fours. This is kind of an unusual choice for fours, but I feel good recommending them. This is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And the reason why I kind of hesitate is because I am not saying that Alice herself is a four. She's not. And if I were to give her a type, she would probably have type 5. But I think Wonderland itself will appeal to the fourth personality. And not just the original Alice in Wonderland or Through the Looking Glass. I recommend any retellings of Wonderland, especially Dark Wonderland. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only four who finds myself drawn to the kind of the creepiness and the quirkiness and the whimsy of Wonderland. So the type 5 are some of my favorite people because my husband's a 5. I love the type 5. Type 5s are what we call the investigators. These are the people who do a lot of research, who get lost in the rabbit hole of looking things up and memorizing things and learning things. They never get enough of learning things. They're usually pretty quiet, but if you do get them talking, especially about a subject they like, they will info dump on you, just like a dump truck. Kind of the down part of the 5 personality is basically is that they're not going to be seen out in public a lot because not only are they loners, but they don't have a lot of energy. It seems like their big brain just seems to suck up all the energy they have, so they don't really socialize too much. So who does that sound like? If you were to think of a literary character that sounds like a type 5, who would you think of? Well, obviously it's Sherlock Holmes. The quintessential 5, the investigator, the detective, the genius. I think any, of course, Sherlock Holmes is a character, he's not a book, but I suggest any of his books in which he is featured would appeal to a 5. This is the complete Sherlock Holmes, has many of his books. This is volume 1, which means it doesn't have any of his books. Okay, another book, again, I do not have this one physically. I like to recommend for a 5, the Enneagram by Neil Stevenson. Not 5 seem to be drawn to science fiction. Again, it's the kind of the technical, the science, and Enneagram is the most sciencey of all science fiction. All the puzzles the reader has to figure out, the new ideas and concepts that are introduced in that book, that will be a 5's heyday. And 5s do have a sense of humor, but not all serious and glum. Do have a sense of humor, so I'm going to also recommend my husband's favorite book, which is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Again, you have the science fiction, the kind of puzzling things out, but with a sense of humor, some good laughs. Type 6 personality is the loyalist. These are people who are the most loyal to their friends. Relationships are important to them. I know they're important to everybody, but the 6 places the most weight on relationships and on striving and maintaining on those relationships. And kind of a thing about the sixes is that they like to plan ahead, they like to be prepared. They're the types who always have a first aid kit um, around just in case, just in case. Um, uh, and that could, I'm not sure if that's what you would call the downside, but they get kind of anxious. They kind of deal with anxiety a lot because always wanting to have things planned ahead, to be prepared, and the anxiety of trying to just keep up with relationships when relationships can be hard, any relationship. But anyway, so when you think of the loyal friend, one character I think of is Samwise Gamgee. So I am going to recommend The Lord of the Rings. Again, sorry, ugly movie covers. Yeah, but we have started backwards. We have The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. And not only Samwise, I think the sixth personality would just appreciate the fellowship itself. They're depending on each other, and just in the how do I put it? The strength, the stamina they have to go on such a long quest, sometimes with no results. So that I think that would appeal to a six. Now, as I said, and relationships are important to type six. And the most interesting relationship I have ever read in a book is in the book Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. So, this book was written in 1979. It's set in 1976. We have a modern black woman named Dana. She lives in California. She's a writer, and she lives with her white husband, Kevin, who is also a writer. But one day she gets pulled back in time. She ends up time traveling out of the blue. Not something she intends to do. She just finds herself back in the 1813, antebellum South, Maryland, with obviously when they were having slaves. Um, so the first thing she sees the first time she time travels is a little boy who's about to drown in a pond. And so her instinct is go rescue him, make sure he's okay. He was a little white boy. His name's Rufus. And when she comes back to her own time, she does research and finds out that Rufus is actually one of her ancestors. That he had a child with a slave named Alice. So she finds herself throughout the book, going back to 1976, but also being pulled back. And every time she's pulled back, Rufus gets older. He turns into not a very nice person. But she always gets pulled back. She finds out that she's pretty much her purpose in being pulled back to the time is to save Rufus whenever he does something stupid to kill himself. Whenever she kind of laughs at him about it. She's like, "How many times can you do something that stupid where you can end up dead?" So she knows that that's her purpose is to rescue Rufus so that her descendants and herself will have a chance of life. So she's there to make sure that child is born between Rufus and Alice. But she obviously is not going to like Rufus anymore. He's the man of his time. She kind of likes him when he's a kid, but when he grows up and just becomes worse and worse, there's a disgust there, there's a hatred there, but she depends on him as much as he depends on her. And it's a really interesting relationship. And I might add, the relationship she has with Alice is also kind of interesting. So I recommend Kindred for the Type 6. And another book, my last book for the Type 6 personality, is probably one that will probably frustrate the sixes, but in a good way. I think they will like it, but it will frustrate them. This is Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. My cat's meowing. But Fingersmith, this is set in Victorian England. Fingersmith is kind of another name for a pickpocket. I'm not a pickpocket, I'm a fingersmith, that kind of thing. But so we kind of focus on this kind of gang of pickpockets, fingersmiths. And there is also a sapphic relationship forming. So yeah, that one too kind of follow that relationship to kind of follow. But the thing with this book is that there are so many twists and turns. It gets to be where you don't know who to be loyal to. Who is the good guy? Who's the bad guy? Can we trust these people to be friends? Can they trust each other? I think that will frustrate the type six, but in a good way. I think they will like the kind of intensity of that book. Type sevens, sometimes called the adventurer. I call them the fun types, basically. They're the kinds who like to laugh, who likes to have fun. Um, Usually they laugh at, sometimes they laugh in the inappropriate times. Think about the people who tell jokes at funerals and stuff. Um, the downside for them is that a lot of their laughter, a lot of their adventure seeking is to hide some deep pain. Think Robin Williams. Okay. So there is that kind of inner grief that the sevens have, but that they try to cover up and laugh over. So, what better character to recommend to the type sevens than the boy who wouldn't grow up, Peter Pan? Now, what people don't know is like usually when they buy a book that says Peter Pan, they're actually getting two books. They're getting Peter and Wendy and Peter in Kensington Garden, published at different times, but now they all fall under the one book of Peter Pan. And it's not just the fact that this is a fun adventure story for the Type 7, but there is some darkness to this. It kind of gets really, really rough, really sad sometimes. And especially if you kind of believe in the theory that Peter Pan is actually the angel of death, who is escorting children who have died to never, never die. I think the sevens will appreciate that. Another one, totally a fun one. I have to go with one that's just nothing but fun, and that's Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. And basically, it's kind of a twist on a fairy tale. We have a beautiful girl named Sophie who has two sisters who are even more beautiful than she is, and she has a stepmother who's actually kind. And, so it's a kind of twist. And this one day she meets the Witch of the Waste. Witch of the Waste, not the Witch of the West, Witch of the Waste, Waste. And she takes the witch off, and the witch turns her into an old lady. So she has to go to Howl's Castle, which is a moving castle. It'll like disappear and appear in different places. So she has to go find help from Howl, a magician named Howl. And it's totally fun. There's really not really any danger or anything. It's just good old fun. Okay, so if you're a 7 and you're watching this, and you're probably thinking, so Heather, you just recommended 2 books for me that could be technically considered children's books. How about something adult? Okay, I'll give you an adult book. In fact, I'll give you a horror. How about that for the fun-loving personality? I recommend The House of Leaves for the 7s. Now, I'm not saying that this is a fun book. It's not. It's going to be quite an experience for the 7s, but I think they will like it. Those who know, those who have read the book knows it is not a read. It's not a book to read. It is a book to experience. And part of it is that we have narrative upon narrative, like a story within a story within a story within a story. But it's also like the format. We have weird looking pages because basically we're looking at some journals here, some guy's journal. So we have pages where it looks like they don't have hardly any words at all. Then let me see if I can find the really fun pages. There we go. Try to read that. So I think the 7s will enjoy the experience, the puzzling out of this book. That being said, which do you read first? Do you read the spots, or do you read this? This is upside down, by the way. So if you read that, you have to turn it. It's an experience. I think the 7s will enjoy that. But on a more serious note, one of the characters, I would think you would call him the main character, Johnny Truant. He's kind of an adventure-seeking kid who has really deep pain. And I think that's, if any type were to see Johnny Truant as a sympathetic character, it would be the 7s. That's why I recommend House of Blues by Mark C. Daniel Lewis. Type 8s, they are called challengers. Yeah, my brain couldn't think of the word. The 8s are called challengers. These are the people who are good leaders. Um, they get things done. They're good at getting other people to get things done too. Not afraid to back down from an argument. Not afraid to be blunt. Um, it's some people might think the 8s are hard to get along with, but if you have an 8 in your life and you're not an 8 yourself, if you have an 8 just really getting on you, just nagging you to be better, to achieve more, you should be grateful because that means that that 8 actually believes in you. If they didn't think that you could do it, they wouldn't nag you. But if you have an 8 in your life who is challenging you, like his name or her or their name says, if you have an 8 that's challenging you, take that as a compliment. And maybe try to rise up to that challenge. So, 8, I think they'll be into big epics. If an 8's going to read a book, it's going to read a big epic. And so I'm kind of doing another trilogy here, which is the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy by Tad Williams. Look at these big boys. So it starts with the Dragon Bloom Chair, then Stone of Farewell. Then you can tell it took me a long time to read this. Look how worn out these books are. But to Green Angel Tower. And in classic epic fantasy, lots of danger, lots of action, lots of adventure. It'll be fun for an 8. Another book I like to recommend for the 8 personality is The Once and Future King by T.H. White. This is the story of King Arthur. And I think 8s would just eat up a story about the legendary King Arthur. And the Age of Chivalry itself, I think, will appeal to the 8s. Okay, Kitty, you're okay. Sorry. But I recommend The Once and Future King. Okay, so we know that 8s are not afraid to read big books, that they like adventure, they like danger. Why don't I throw in another little element that they would appreciate? How about the element of a revenge story? Well, then you get none other than The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Oh, an 8 personality would just love Edmond Dantes. And just eat up the revenge story that is in here. This is like the story of revenge. And it's big enough to be a challenge for the challenger. So, my personality, the last personality we're going to talk about, is the peacemaker. Kind of totally switch from the challenger. These are people who just want peace. They want everybody to get along. Sometimes a 9 finds it hard to find themselves. Again, it's kind of like the phrase, they're hard to get to really know who they truly are because they try so hard to empathize with other personalities that sometimes it's hard for them and other people to know who they are and down what their wants, their desires are. So that's kind of the downside. So the first book I recommend for Part 9 is The Wild Robot by Brown. About a robot who gets shipwrecked on a wild island full of animals. And she has to get used to them, and they have to get used to her. So I think the Type 9 personality will really like the attempt they have to get along in their environment. And I also think the 9 would just love the idea of a robot actually feeling emotions, especially feeling love. And that would really appeal to a 9. And when I think of Type 9, I think of cozy books. And it doesn't get any cozier than The Wind and the Willows. Yeah, I got an old thrift store copy again. Let's see if I can find some pictures for you. I have pictures in the book. I can't remember. Anyway, The Wind and the Willows by Kenneth Graham. It doesn't get cozier than this. Just, every season of the year and how beautiful each season could be. And how sometimes we have friends who could be very annoying, but we still are friends with them. Not and in all honesty, this is again considered a kid's book, but I think this book says more about friendship than most other adult books I've ever read. Just saying, some beautiful passages about friendship. Okay, so once again, I recommended two books that could be considered kids' books. So the line is just screaming at me, saying, "Give me an adult book." Okay, well, I recommend Tressa the Emerald Sea. I guess you could call this cozy fantasy, but it's not something like the Spell Shop or Legends and Lattes or anything like that. This does have adventure. It has danger. It has extreme danger, very dangerous situation here. But the main character herself is just laid back, calm, tries to get along with everybody. Um, and I think, if I remember right, I heard that this was kind of inspired by The Princess Bride. And I know that the nine personality loves The Princess Bride. If you're nine personality, that's just one of those movies that I say movie because the movie is better than the book. Just saying. But The Princess Bride is a movie that the nines are just drawn to, and you do get that feeling, that kind of cozy and yet dangerous feeling here in this book, The Tress of the Emerald Sea. So that's what I recommend. So let me know what you guys think. Did you find out what personality you are, what type you are? If you know your Enneagram type, do you agree with my recommendations? Or do you have a recommendation for books that you think will fit a certain personality type in the Enneagram? Let me know. Um, I, I was going to say something in closing. I've done something about my channel. I haven't put up a lot of videos. I'm very new to BookTube. Um, but I decided I'm going to stick with kind of, if I have a niche, just the fact that I'm not going to do what a lot of booktubers do. I'm not going to do a TBR jar. I want to do things like this. I want to do videos that are fun like this. And videos about, I might take three books and find that seem to have nothing to do with each other and find a connection with the three. Those are things I like to talk about. I really want to talk about books. So I may do wrap ups every now and then, like a monthly wrap up. In fact, if I do a video next week, it'll be a wrap up of June. But just, um, I hope that's okay with you guys. I hope you have fun with this channel. My purpose in this channel is to really talk about books. And I want that conversation to come from you guys too. So please stick around, like and subscribe if you will, and see what comes next. See what other fun videos we could do in the future. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.